Of all of the animals on the planet Earth, every single one of them, the one that scares me the most is a shark. Sure, there are animals I don't love and that are scary, but the one that terrifies me the most is a shark. And I'm sure this isn't surprising, but I am not alone in this thought. So, you would think that shark movies have a super low bar to scare the shit out of me. Jaws had such a profound effect on me growing up, and it still is a super effective shark movie despite being almost 50 years old. Obviously, there are a lot of reasons of that besides the shark itself, but still. And yet, shark movies tend to be the worst horror movies time and time again. No one seems to know how to make a good, scary one. I think it's because the CGI for sharks still don't look very good. It's fine when they're sort of just lazily swimming around, but the second a shark has to attack or move fast, it looks like a cartoon or a video game graphic. Out of all the shark movies that I can think of, Open Waters I thought was effective, The Reef worked for me, and to my surprise, 47 Meters Down I found really enjoying and being way more scarier than I anticipated. The rest, throw them all away. Like, they don't generate even a blip of dread on my horror movie meter. And really, all of that is just to say, this one's no different. Under Paris is a 2024 movie about a killer shark that is roaming around the rivers that run through Paris, specifically the Seine. My overall problem with this movie is its tone. It basically splits the baby. It tries to play it both extremely straight while also having campy shark-eating moments, which I think just hurt it in the long run. Either you go over the top big and fun, or you dial it down and make it serious and human. But when you're trying to do both, you end up accomplishing neither. Basically, the movie begins at the Great Trash Island in the Pacific Ocean, and Sophia, who is a marine biologist, is tracking a mako shark that they tagged several months ago called Beacon 7. Her team's job is to extract a sample from the shark and get an update on its progress. Her team then dives into the water and makes their way to where the beacon is showing them. Now, along the way, they come across an injured sperm whale caught inside one of the nettings, and it is leaking blood, causing several of the sharks to show up, including this Beacon 7, who for some reason now is much larger than it should have been given its age. Anyway, this underwater team, led by Sophia's husband, wants to cut and run, but Sophia says no. Anyway, Beacon 7 then goes bananas and kills everyone. Sophia then herself goes bananas and grabs a spear gun and jumps in the water like Rambo, then has a face-off with the shark that Thomas Jane and Jason Statham would be proud of. But for some reason, they just sort of stare at each other for a bit. The shark that just tore through 4 people like it was nothing is just kind of looking at her and is wary of her because she has a spear gun, I guess. Now, this is the first encounter of the plot armor in this movie, and we're only 10 minutes in. So finally, the shark charges Sophia. She fires the spear gun, and the spear glances off the shark's side. But instead of the shark just eating her, as it did the others, maybe it was full, I don't know, it then banks left and swims by her, and a netting that was somehow attached to the shark grabs her leg, and the shark begins to drag her straight down towards the bottom of the ocean super fast. Now, my first thought here, actually, I had several thoughts. My first thought, why are you just free diving around a bunch of sharks? Although, to be honest, I haven't really watched Shark Week in many, many years, so maybe that's normal now. But to me, I would think that you would handle all tagging and sample collection from a boat. You bait something and then let it come to you while you are safe on a boat. But, hell, what do I know? Maybe this is a new thing. The second thing I thought is, when she gets dragged down, wouldn't she have huge compression problems? And to that point, we actually do see at some point her ears are bleeding from the pressure. However, she manages to cut herself free and escape from the netting that is attached to the shark somehow and gets back to the surface. Now, why did the shark just take off like that? I don't know. Where was it going? Did it understand the idea of water pressure depths and was trying to kill her that way? I mean, why didn't it just turn around and kill her when she was swimming back up to the surface? None of this is explained. This is literally 11 minutes into the movie. You can already see where my problem with this movie is. But whatever. We then jump to 3 years later, and she is now a tour guide at an aquarium. Now, I thought she was going to be deaf or something given the sequence of her ears bleeding, which I thought would have been an interesting thing for a character going forward and something that they would have had to deal with kind of down the road. But no, like, she's just normal now. I mean, just happens to be in a different job. So I don't really understand why they did the whole pressure bleeding ears thing. I don't know what that means. Anyway, Sophia is now living in Paris, and she is approached by a young woman named Mika, who is part of some Save the Sharks organization, and they need her help. Apparently, Beacon 7 is currently in the river Seine that runs through Paris, and they want her help to guide Beacon 7 out before it drowns in the river. She then takes Sophia back to what can only be described as a hacker headquarters from a 90s movie, and they show her that Beacon 7 is in fact in the river. Mika mentions that a car had fallen into the river the other day and the driver is currently missing. However, Sophia doesn't want to believe any of it, and she just wants no part of what she's doing. But when she gets home, it kind of nags at her enough to pull out her old laptop and starts tracking the shark again anyway. She then tracks the shark to a corner of a street where she discovers a dead body. Meanwhile, Mika goes on a dive and finds that car that fell into the bottom of the river, and it has a giant cartoon bite mark in the door. Why is this car still at the bottom of the river? If someone drives a car into the river, shouldn't the police have pulled it out by now? Like, that is that common when someone drives into a river to just sort of shrug and leave it in there? Second, so what they're suggesting is that the driver drove into the river and then just stayed in the driver's seat for long enough that the shark just came out to investigate and then ate the person right out of the driver's seat. But yet it didn't take a chunk of the car door with it. It just made a bite to put the marks in the door and then let go. Like, this is just comical at this point. Suffice to say, this all gets even more ridiculous from here. Sophia ends up teaming up with the river police, and of course, they don't believe her until they do. They go to the mayor, who doesn't want anything to do with this because, coincidentally, there's a river triathlon event that is about to start in a few days, and there's too much money invested in it. So Sophia and the river police are on their own. Mika has other crazy ideas about saving it, and the three separate groups are now on a collision course for the rest of the film. And that's not even touching on the giant cache of unexploded World War II shells that are discovered to be lying along the entire river. But we'll get to that later. Now, you might be wondering how this shark can survive in a river. I don't know why you'd be wondering anything at this point. But, well, apparently Beacon 7, or Lilith as she is known, is thought to be a mako, but it's actually some new species that they didn't know about. But what I don't get is that this was the shark that they tagged to begin with. So someone had to tag the shark originally. Like, where did it come from? Did this shark just grow into another kind of shark? Like, that's not how evolution works. And speaking of silly things, the plot armor around Sophia in this movie is just out of control. Like, aside from her face-off with Lilith in the beginning of this movie, there's a sequence where she's in the water with the river police dude, Adil, but instead of attacking them, the shark decides to flip over a giant boat in one of the worst-looking sequences in the movie, and then immediately chomps them in half like it's a video game. Meanwhile, the two leads are just doing a backstroke 20 feet away, just untouched. So I think you get the point. I mean, the overall issue that I have with these type of shark movies is that they constantly want to supersize the shark in some way. Make them smarter, faster, more vicious, more upgrades. I mean, in this case, it can all of a sudden swim in a river when it couldn't before, or it reproduces differently. It can seemingly reason in a way that sharks shouldn't be able to, or its group behavior is more sinister than it ever was. But the issue with that is none of that is really needed because just a garden variety shark is terrifying. There's no real need to try to improve on that design. Like, just make the shark do shark things. It will be scary. When you try to add all these upgrades and special powers to a shark like it's a video game, it just makes it feel like a video game. Oh, the shark got enough XP in order to unlock the endless reproduction upgrade. Now next up is the super fast swim boost. Great. Like, remember those unexploded bombs I mentioned at the bottom of the river? Well, somehow the shark is able to explode by just simply swimming over them. I mean, bikes, cars, people, boats, trash, scooters, all have been thrown into the river for the last 80 years, and yet a shark swimming by them fast makes them explode. Just, ugh. Now, I'm not going to go much further into this movie. I mean, I think you get the idea. But if there was a meter for shark movies, and you had Jaws on one side and let's say Sharknado on the other, this one's definitely more towards the Sharknado side. Maybe just to the left of the Meg. I mean, its premise is ridiculous, the plot armor is absurd, and what the shark does throughout this movie is just bonkers. I mean, the shark is like a super shark because it evolved in 3 months or something, somehow. I don't know. At least in Deep Blue Sea, as crazy as that plot is, the story was that the sharks were genetically engineered to be smarter. I can't believe I'm defending Deep Blue Sea as a positive example. Listen, I get it. Everyone has their own specific tastes as to what they like, especially when it comes to shark movies. This movie will appeal to a certain number of people. If you enjoy movies like The Meg, where it's all just fun excuses to see sharks chomp on people, you will probably like this movie. However, I would warn this movie's not really played for laughs. I'll give it this. The acting is fine. At least Sophia gets some character fleshing out. And the sharks, when they're not attacking people, look good. It also has some nice cinematography in parts, and the blood effects are quality. But this is mostly all played straight. Like, Sharknado knows what it is, and it plays with that while winking at the camera. And the two Meg movies are also very tongue-in-cheek. This movie feels like it wants to be taken seriously like a Jaws movie, but everything about it is so over-the-top silly that that's impossible. I'll give this movie a D, but let me know what you think.